Podcast with Rich Keefe. It's the DORK Podcast. And Davey. It's the DORK Podcast. Hashtag. It's the hashtag DORK Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Hashtag Dork. My name is Rich Keefe, joined as always by Davey Eyeballs. He is Ray Von Day. He's also Davey Snaps. All hail the king of ginger ale. It's Ryan Davey. Davey, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm okay tonight, Richard. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Let me just tell you a real quick story before we dive headfirst into the topic du jour. We're going to be recording these back to back. So what I'm going to say about this is you might see the runtime and say, hey, this is a little light, but we're going to do more of it. So sometimes we do This Week in Dork, Video Game Minute and everything, and then we do like 10 minutes of the actual topic du jour. I promise you an equal topic du jour for this episode and the next one. But Ryan, quick, let me set up a quick story for you. I was outside in my backyard. As you know, I have a shed, brag. I noticed on the back of the shed, sort of like not where you go into the door, but on the other side behind it.
More skinks?
No, none of those ermines. Not a single ermine to be had. This was up higher than me.
Okay.
I noticed several bees, hornets, wasps, whatever they might be. A ton of them, right? Let's play a quick game of guess what I did. Why don't you take a shot? Guess what I did.
I'm going to guess in an error in judgment, you threw something at them.
You are 100% correct. I chucked a soccer ball at them as hard as I could against the wall, to which scores of them came out of
legions,
including the Vagar of the group, who attacked me directly and stung me on the forehead.
Let me see.
You can't. It was 2 or 3 days ago.
Oh, is it like the queen came out and got you?
It swelled up, and I was like, "Holy son of a gun!" I'm like, "This hurts way more than I remember."
Did you like lock eyes with it?
I was like trying to get out of the way because there was a flurry of activity, and then this one darted at me, and he went full go, and he like smacked me in the head. And at first you're like, maybe he just ran into me, and then as time went on, you're like, oh no, there's venom coursing through my blood. It hurt, dude. I was like,
something does not feel right.
And I was like, God, that was so stupid. 10 minutes later, I circled back with a tennis ball.
A gasoline-soaked tennis ball that I just lobbed into the shed.
I got to figure something out. That can't last. Something needs to change.
What you do is you get a can of Raid, right? You take you under pressure and you just like throw it right into the close the door.
No, it's not inside. It's outside. And they're like going in. There must be like just
like under the eave, like under the thing.
No, it's like I think they like into like the wood or something, because when I go inside the shed, I don't see any of them there. And then outside, they're all crawling like on the outside. It's weird.
Can I tell you a wonderful wasp story?
Of course.
So when I was living
family of kids at St. Paul's,
working at the all boys school in Connecticut. Yeah. We used to take I don't know why we did this, but we used to take the seniors on a paintball trip.
Nice.
Which was, they had to sign waivers and like all this stuff. And it was super fun. So there were these 2 kids, they were hockey players, and I'll never forget. One of them, I think I told the story before. It was 2 Peoples. Did I ever tell you that story?
It was 2 people?
2 people. No, it's his nickname. The guy I coached with called him 2 Peoples.
No, I don't.
And I was like, what do you call it? Because the kid's name wasn't anything close to that, right? And I'm like, what are you calling him? And he goes, 2 Peoples. And I go, why? And he goes, because no one person's that fucking dumb. To which I was like, okay.
Man, that's kind of a little bit of a journey to get there, but we'll take it.
All right. So 2 Peoples and this other kid were like playing paintball, and they were doing that thing where you got to go uphill, like one team's uphill and the other one's downhill. So they dive behind this rock, and there are wasps like in the ground. So one of them kneels on like the wasp nest, and so they're like they have like the coveralls on, so the wasps go up into the coveralls. So these kids are getting stung.
You're trapped.
So what do? So they run out in the middle of this paintball field, like asking for help, and they just got fucking lit.
Oh my God.
Like Willem Dafoe in Platoon. Like they were getting absolutely annihilated by wasps and by paintballs at the same
That's
time.
legitimately like a Jackass sketch where they're like, all right, the paintballs aren't enough. We need everybody to get stung a million times, then get shot.
These poor kids, they were like ripping the coveralls off, and they're like, stop, 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 and like everyone just like, downhill, just lighting them up. It was one of the funniest and most horrible things I've ever seen.
Horrifying. Yeah, you couldn't. Yeah, that is brutal for those guys. But anyway, let's get to this.
Y'all ready for bisque?
Topic du jour time.
Already?
Well, I'm glad you asked. It's the topic of the day. And today, it is the Acolyte.
Yeah.
The Star Wars Disney Plus series that ran for 8 episodes. They released the first, was it 2? And we did a standalone on that. And then they released them each weekly until this past week when it concluded. We will begin, as we do with all of our TV and movie reviews, spoiler free. Ryan, the Acolyte, did you like it?
No,
Yeah.
I did not.
How about this? I did until I didn't.
I did until I didn't. Now, you and I were early on some of the most staunch defenders of this show.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Give it a chance.
Yeah.
You know, we have some good things that we're working with here. It's a great time period. These are good characters.
Yes.
Shit their pants in the last 6 episodes.
Shit it in and down their pants.
Yes. Down their leg.
That is, I mean, I was going to say Leon Lett, but they didn't really get to the end zone. Like, they had a good drive. They had a good drive.
Yeah.
It was like a pick in the red zone, not in the end zone, but it was like a pick. Like, you move the ball down the field. You're like, we might have something here. And then it's like,
it was like the 86 Super Bowl with the Patriots and the Bears. The Patriots go right down, kick a field goal. You're like, okay,
let's go.
And then they just get absolutely pumped the
of
rest of the
left.
game. Yeah.
A lot of game left. They didn't have it in them. So this was, and let's just briefly acknowledge the fact that there were a number of people that didn't like the show for a particular reason. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on it, but we're acknowledging that this show has such a bad Roddy T's score by people that haven't even seen it. Case in point, one of the episodes hadn't even been released yet, and it had like a 20 score on Roddy T's or whatever, like a 10 score on Roddy T's. So there's a lot of people that don't like how diverse the cast is. I guess we can kind of put it that way.
Yeah, we can put it that way. Yeah. Or some of the ideas. And that's not, see, that's not the problem I had with it at all. And 2, it didn't matter what you looked like or where you came from. Like, that was not going to save bad writing.
Yeah. No, I agree. And so I get it. So because when people are like, yeah, of course the show's bad. Look at it's got like a 12 on Roddy T's. I'm like, it's not really a 12,
too much stock into that. Yeah.
But whatever. So we're just going to address the stuff that as Star Wars fans, we either did like, maybe there's a few things, and the stuff that we did not like. First, what we always like to do is let's rank the series, right? Sort of like what we've done with Marvel series or with the movies or with the Star Wars movies. I think it's probably a little too convoluted, or maybe this is a separate episode to include all of the animated. I think that'd be a very layered conversation with Clone Wars and Bad Batch and Rebels. Just live action, Disney Plus, The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and The Acolyte. There's been 6 shows. Obviously, Mando's had 3 seasons, but there's been 6 total shows. And for the purpose of our conversation, you can't split up Mando. You got to give Mando
it's the whole thing or none of it, right? So I think for me, and I did this, so this was on, we did this on Twitter the other, like I would put, so like 1A, 1B, I would go like Andor and Ahsoka are like the 2 best as they stand right now. And that's because if it was just the first season of The Mandalorian, I would put that number 1. But the Mandalorian as a whole has kind of fallen off a little bit for me. And and that's not to say it's bad, but those other 2 shows were that good. I think.
Yeah.
And then from there, I would go Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan. Then this.
Was last.
And I would say as bad as people, as much shit as people gave Obi-Wan, at least it had fucking Darth Vader in it.
It had Darth Vader, for sure it did. So for me, similar score, I would go Ahsoka 1. I would say for me, that's been the only 6 out of 6 show. Although, like you said, Mando season 1 might have been 6 out of 6, but you gotta put it all together. So I'm just adding all the episodes, the good and the bad, the boring and the fast. So I'm going Ahsoka 1 and/or 2, really closely behind. Could even break the tie because season 2 is coming out at some point. Ahsoka Andor, then the Mandalorian. I'm gonna go with the Book of Boba Fett because there was some cool stuff.
The 2 episodes he wasn't in them.
I was gonna say not him. Not him. That was Cad Bane, right? Wasn't that
Cad Bane? Cad Bane was 5, 6. Like it was whatever the last. It was because it was a mini. It was 6 episodes, right?
And then like Mando came in and like saved it. You know what I mean?
Like, right. But there was that whole episode with just the Mandalorian with Din and Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Like, and Luke Skywalker, which was the best episode of that whole thing. Which is
insane. So like that jumps up. So, and this is a good question. I should look this up. Jason in the chat's asking, what did we give Obi-Wan Kenobi? I feel like I was really low on it. I think I was like a 2.5. You were probably more like
I was like a 3.5.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. We can look that up. That I definitely have record of that somewhere. But man, I go back and forth on this. I think I'm gonna have to say this was worse. I would say worse. I would probably. Well, we'll get to it in a minute. They might end up having the same dork score, but as you know, there's hard, soft, and firm. So I would say that this, like, I don't think it's not like a 1. It's not Jupiter's Legacy.
No, it's not. It's not unwatchable.
It's not Madam Web. Like, I think there are good parts. So speaking of, there are good parts. I feel like a lot of the parts were in the trailer. Like some of the cool lightsaber action was in the trailer. Some of the new characters that we don't know were in the trailer. And then the execute, you were like, oh, some of those cool scenes, that's what it was. And then some of the characters that we wanted to learn more about, it was like that they're really not going to factor in. Tough.
And they like shoehorn in a bunch of shit in this that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know, but it does. We'll get to. Are we doing full spoilers here? Because we're doing the. Are we waiting?
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah. So, but it does ask a compelling question, and it does kind of like open something up.
Yeah.
At the very end, that you're like, wait.
Yeah. There's definitely, as you mentioned earlier, I like the fact that it's sort of an untapped time in Star Wars.
Yeah.
They've been so heavy in between episode 3 and 4, then also trying to do some in between episode 6 and 7 stuff that pre-episode 1, like, oh, hello. Like this is a welcome time. But I think you got to be careful with this because the prequels, for better or worse, kind of established a lot of things.
Yes.
So if you're going to go 100 years before that, you got to kind of play in those lines,
in that sandbox, and you have to like kind of color, as you say, like color within those lines. And there were times they didn't do that, and they dipped into other things, which I would have been more than happy for you to do that if you did it correctly, and they didn't.
I feel like Filoni does such a good job of taking like borderline crap in episode 2 and even episode 1, and some better stuff in episode 3 for sure. I liked episode 3, but saying like, all right, this is the world that's established. This is full canon. I'm going to tell these cool stories in and around it and only make that stuff that we've seen on the big screen better. Whereas this, I don't know if it really aided the prequels much at all.
No, there was one thing that they could have tied into all of this stuff, and they just kind of like sniffed it and backed away.
Yes, and we'll get to that because
we'll get to that. Yeah.
I would say, however, because you're only getting 1-2 Star Wars shows a year, I think it is a must watch. As low as the scores I'm about to give it, I think it's a must watch because we're all psycho Star Wars fans. You can't have an opinion on something until you've seen it. And who knows, maybe there is going to be, we don't know what some of these other shows are going to be. Maybe some of these characters will kind of tie in. So in a weird way, and because it's only 8 episodes, you're not committing to 16 episodes. You're committing to 8. I'm going to say it's a must watch. Would you tell people to skip it or watch it?
No, I think you have to watch it. I think it's, if you are a true fan of the genre, if you're a true fan of what you say you are, then you watch it.
Yeah.
Like it's like if your sports team stinks, they had, like the Patriots had a bad season last year, you still have to watch every Sunday. You can't bail.
That's a good point. The Star Wars might be my 5th professional team.
Yeah,
I'm a Celtics, Bruins, Patriots, Red Sox, Star Wars fan. So good,
so bad season, you can't bail. Right? What kind of fan are you?
That's right.
And then when it's good, again, you can't celebrate in those successes either because you bailed when they were bad. That's my personal opinion. That's how I feel.
That Mando Grogu movie is going to come out and people are going to be like, oh, how about this? Like, yeah, where were you with Acolyte?
Where were you?
Where are you with Acolyte season 2? Which I don't know if it's even going to be a thing.
Yeah.
What is your hashtag dork score for the Acolyte?
2.
I'm going to go 2.5 because I think that's what I gave Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I think it's kind of on par where I could string together like a little bit of a highlight reel, but then I also had way more problems with it than not. Mm-hmm. All right. You guys, if you're in the live chat, let us know what your score was for the Acolyte. You can always hit us up on Twitter and Instagram as well at Dork Podcast. And if you have a lengthy discussion about the Acolyte, hit us up dorkpodcast@gmail.com.
Spoilers! Here come the spoilers!
All right, so I'm glad I remembered this because this came out right before the series, and I remember thinking, this is a spoiler. Everything is a spoiler to me.
Mm-hmm.
But IGN, which we've all had our, whatever. You can roll your eyes at IGN. But right before the Acolyte came out, they tweeted something to the effect of, the Acolyte's going to be the first live action show not to feature any pre-established characters. They worded it something to that effect.
Yep.
So my first thought is that is a spoiler. Like if you're telling me right now that it's only going to be new characters and I'm not going to see any characters like that I already know in Star Wars, that to me is a huge spoiler, because especially in this, there was a couple of mysterious characters. They didn't know who they were. Then there was a reveal. So now you're telling the listener or any idiot who read that, well, it can't be X, Y, and Z. But then as the series is playing out, they were fucking wrong. That wasn't even correct.
No. And it wasn't even correct. And like, you wonder too, when people get like these early access to the shows, people like IGN, they get like screener copies. And if it's just the first 3 episodes, then you're not going to get any established characters. But then you were wrong.
You were wrong, which was insane. And so one of the things that they were wrong about, or one of the where they were exposed that they were wrong, and we can kind of bounce around with this because again, there is some good things. There's a lot of bad things. And if you're just talking about continuity or how it ties into the prequels, in episode 4, they chose to bring in Ki-Adi-Mundi. Is that how you say his name?
Ki-Adi-Mundi, yeah.
He's the guy that debuted in Phantom Menace. He looks kind of like a wizard. He's like the
Jedi he's got like the pointy head.
Yeah, he's got like the beard, the pointy head. He's like an alien type guy. So they brought him in. 2 things. One, a controversy arose that says, well, if this is 100 years before episode 1, how old is this guy now? And there were some that thought they knew how old he was. And they're like, all right, so this actually takes place 4 years before he was born. Now, that was actually in Legends. And not to go down this too deep a road, but there's canon and there's Legends. And so there's so much Star Wars content. There's books, comic books, video games, on top of all the movies and TV shows, that a lot of stuff has just been deemed Legends. And then the movies and all these shows that we talk about are canon. So I'm not that bent out of shape about his birthday. He's an alien. He can be 1,000. Like, look how old Yoda is. I don't really care about that. What I do care about, which is related to him, is I think his only line in Phantom Menace is he's like, there's been no sign of the Sith for a millennia. Well, you just came across a Sith 100 years ago, pal.
Yeah.
What's up
the
with that?
Millennium's 1,000 years.
What the fuck is that? Yeah, that's 1,000 years. So the Sith have been around for 1,000 years, even though he was face to face with one 100 years ago.
Or is he lying?
So that's the thing that could be revealed later on, but that's gonna be tough to kind of maneuver.
Yeah,
but maybe, and that's the other thing, is because at the very end, just to jump way ahead, at the very end of this season, you get Yoda.
Because that's we know he's 800 years old when Luke meets him, so he's there.
And so people were pissed early on. They're like, well, if this is the real Jedi Council, then Yoda has to be there. It's like, look, there's a lot of stories where Yoda leaves Coruscant and he's all over the place and he's doing all these different things. So I didn't mind that he wasn't there. I thought it was cool that they brought him back. but he's now going to go talk to, I forget the green lady.
Mhm.
And so he was also on the council when Kiadi Mundi was saying that we haven't seen Sith in 1,000 years. So now, like, what the fuck? Are they either in on it, or are they dumb, or are they trying not to get everybody panicked? Like, what's
Well,
going
that's
on?
why I think they're, because you've seen here, they're trying not to panic everybody, especially I think Anakin's in the room and they don't want to like talk about that in front of him, right?
Could be.
Or like, yeah, I mean, that's one of those, you could wiggle out of that by saying like, well, that was an untruth that we told. Those were alternative facts that we
Yeah.
told, that in order to maintain this. But like, this is my biggest issue at its core with this whole thing, is it's like the Jedi are supposed to be the harbinger and like the protectors of like the light side of the Force. And here, I didn't like a single fucking one of them. They were all assholes.
The Jedi
All
were,
of them.
the Jedi were terrible. The character I liked, I don't even know if I liked her the most, but I would say Osha, because Osha kind of reminded me of the Ahsoka, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
But like, all right, I will train from the Jedi. I understand what the Jedi are doing, but like, I can't go full on this way. Like, I'm not going full Sith either, but I got to kind of blend it, because the Jedi in this are kind of either a bunch of assholes or fuck ups or just like annoying. Like, it's not a good group.
But they're supposed, even like Soul, who's like supposed to be like this wise Qui-Gon kind of figure, is an idiot. Like, he does stupid things.
Yeah. So in the chat, they're saying that every Jedi that saw the Sith was killed. So disagree, right? Because like they were all talking about it, and I think Kiadi Moody was there when fucking what's his name? How do you say his name? Well, they call him the Stranger, but then they also call him, is it Quimir?
Kimir or something? Kimir? Yeah.
They saw that, or at least got word of it, right? So even if they weren't all there, there's enough of them going around, and they're clearly telling the story now back at the Jedi Council. So my point is, they can't play dumb like there haven't been Sith around. Like, Sith interacted with Jedi, so that is out there. They got to find a way to either move that on. And if I just feel like it's dangerous to set that up, because this show was not very successful. It probably won't get a continuation, and therefore you're kind of dangling this thing that will never get a payoff. I can't imagine that like Kiadi Moody was like in on it, or like that he was either a double agent or was just simply trying to protect the truth. It just seems like it's out there. Whereas when Filoni does stuff, he kind of ties it together.
But I also have a huge issue with, like, say what you want about the Jedi, like fucking up or like not making the right decision, but they never lie. And I feel like they're very deceptive in this show. They lie constantly.
Yeah. Well, like Soul.
That's the way. Just everything's lying. And then at the end, they lie about how he died.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
They said he did it himself. They lie about like he killed himself. Like, no, like, no, he didn't. Like, so that's another cover up too.
I know. Like, you would think, and obviously nobody is like 100% good. Like, I think that's also part of it.
No,
like,
that's not what I'm saying. That like,
no, I know,
like,
but they should be closer. Like, they should probably be a little bit closer to that than not.
Like, did you find yourself at times like Kimir and like the Stranger? Like, I kind of agree with him.
He was actually pretty sweet. So I liked the helmet. The helmet was fucking cool.
Yeah.
I did think it was kind of predictable though that was him, because there's a few episodes because he was working with May like as himself, and then he was also like May's instructor. We're like, who's the instructor? And you're like, I don't know, probably that guy. And then it was
also, like, they never really explained, because I knew he was like a student of someone else, but they never really explained what happened.
The green lady,
right? But they never explained what happened to him.
So he's out there. So one thing I would have to give to this show is some of the fight scenes and lightsaber duels and action sequences were legit.
Yes.
And he was excellent. He had one move. He had already stabbed somebody through the chest with his lightsaber, and then he force moved somebody else on top of it. Like, took another body and like forced him onto the saber. We'd never seen that before.
No, and I did like the detachable.
Yes, it would
like
turn.
We had like the little one. Yeah, turn into two. That was nice.
He was badass, and I liked his helmet. Like
I like the costume too.
Yeah,
but like I just wish that character we figured out more about. Okay, You wasted an entire episode telling us something we already knew. Why not talk about him?
Yeah. I agree. No, that was so frustrating because episode 6, you got some really good stuff with him and him talking to OSHA, and I kind of liked OSHA and the whole thing and him back and forth and him like kind of training her a little bit. So you're like, all right, we're actually getting a little bit of momentum back. And then episode 7 was one of the worst episodes ever. It was like a 40-minute previously on because it was all stuff we either knew, including some clips I think they just replayed, and then it was stuff that we assumed happened, and you're like, where's the one cool character that you have established? He wasn't in it the whole episode.
And like it, and ultimately, like the reason he did what Soul did what he did and the Jedi did what they didn't matter.
No. That was
like they were like the babysitter that got hit by the car. Like they didn't matter. Like, no, the homeless people that got hit by the car. Like they just didn't matter.
Fucked us.
Yeah, I had no, I don't know, like that whole thing was okay. So one sister got lost, the other one didn't, and nothing really came of that because they wound up flipping anyway.
Yep.
And this whole thing with them like being one person, but not.
Yeah, that was confusing.
They never explained that.
Soul was like, you guys aren't even, you're not twins, you're not even sisters. And I'm like, what?
So
why, just the way that they were created? Like, I guess. I like the Night Sisters, by the way.
Yes. And so what you were about to say too is like, I love the fact that there are other Force users that aren't Jedi or Sith. The people who have tapped into this. We love the Night Sisters. We love Dathomir. Like we love all that stuff. That there are Force users, Force sensitive people who don't fall into either camp, right? But what the fuck was that?
Yeah, I don't know.
It didn't make any sense.
No, it wasn't great. And not to spend a lot of time on this, but Obi-Wan Kenobi was let down by some of the acting, including maybe like a young Princess Leia wasn't the greatest actor in the world. Right. The girl that played the young Osha and May was tough to have a lot of dialogue, tough to be in it a lot. Did not help the show. Is how
and like characters who had to get like really emotional and really upset. Yeah. They couldn't really pull it off.
No,
it was too Disney kid. Like
I wish we got more Carrie-Anne Moss and like they just smoked her out early and then you figured out, all right, this is what the show is. It's these 4 Jedi were there. They're all going to get killed. So they'll appear in flashbacks. So I'm like, she would have been a cool Jedi and she gets snuffed out immediately.
Kalnaka's on the screen for 5 minutes. He gets got.
Yep.
The fucking idiot Padawan, his adult thing, he's just meditating the whole time and then drinks poison. So they don't matter.
He was awful.
In terms of the whole story. Like you could have jumped in, they were already dead. It doesn't matter.
I do like the challenge that the stranger gave to May, though. He's like, you got to kill a Jedi without a weapon. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but like, who doesn't have the weapon, the Jedi or you?
Yeah, no, well, you don't have the weapon. Yeah, I think that's what he was going for. So the other thing with prequels and finding out that you're going to get a show that takes place 100 years before the prequel, we got talking before this all. We were like, Plagueis, like we're going to see Darth Plagueis, right? Like Darth Plagueis, great scene between Palpatine and Anakin telling him this whole story, and it's like about himself, but he doesn't say it's about himself. And this whole thing, like Plagueis, fuck yeah, like we're getting pre-lore. Nothing, and then creep in the shadows, and you're like, what are we doing?
His lore is that like he's like a master manipulator. So like he's just kind of in the shadows the whole time. I don't think you were ever going to like hear him like talk directly, but
so I want
the big hanging chud of this whole thing now.
I know I want to really like this. However, it is a little bit like Obi-Wan just leaning on Vader. Like anytime you put Vader out, I'm like, oh, it's Vader. You know what I mean? Or like Darth Maul. I'm like, oh shit, it's Darth Maul. Like when in Solo, when like they have like a little hologram of Darth Maul. I was like, yes. Like you used them. Like you're like, oh, we're doing our own thing, and then you're like, actually, we're gonna need this, and
we're gonna need this guy. Yeah,
2 seconds of it, and you're like, all right, so he's just watching them.
So here's my theory: that he's been watching the sisters here, the witches. He's been watching them and trying to figure out how to manipulate the Force to create life. He's seen them do it.
Oh, Bubbles got the same point. Bubbles in the chat.
So
He goes, it's all been pointing to Plagueis learning how Osha and May were made, or he was part of it.
So here's the bomb that they could drop, and I hope they don't do it in this show. Is Plagueis responsible for Anakin? Is that the end game of all of this? Is that Plagueis actually finds a way to create life simply through the Force, and that's how Anakin and one person, and that's how Anakin comes to be. Because they made a whole. I like it too, but like the delivery that we have here and the build up to it is not very good.
No,
so
it's
if
not.
You're going to drop a bomb like that and this whole continuity, like you need to involve him somehow.
At least it opens that door up, right? Where you're like, all right, he was there, he saw it, he witnessed it, and he looked kind of creepy. I just wish we saw more of him. He's like, he's a little bit
And
of a
and then that conversation between Anakin and Palpatine, where he tells him about Darth Plagueis, is like him dropping a seed that, like, that's how you got here.
Or what if Palpatine doesn't know that because Anakin is the one who kills Palpatine,
right?
Right. So like, but Plagueis thinking like, all right, this is how they did it because I need my guy, and like nobody has been able to live up to it. All these guys that I've had are good, but they're not good enough.
I have to create him directly from the Force. He cannot have a mother. He cannot have a father. He cannot have like normie people. It has to be straightforward.
I actually love that idea because that would be such a good payoff to Anakin not really having a dad, right? Like rather than him being the Jesus of Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean he's still that because they do. His mother does claim that he doesn't have a father.
So they're saying in the chat, let's see. I thought Anakin was being created through Force powers, was given since the
not really. Like they didn't say it specifically.
I guess, but like it could also be this because that's the other thing about the Sith is like they clearly can mislead the Jedi. The Sith can do their shit, and the Jedi are like, well, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
They make the Jedi out to be like, it's hard to root for the Jedi. They make them out to be like a bunch of shitheads in this.
A bunch of shitheads. And again, this is the High Republic, so they're like, the most powerful. Like, they don't answer to anybody. They're kind of unchecked in this point, so that allows them to be assholes. That I get, but
I was so glad to see Yord get got. Yord was a horrible character.
Yord?
Remember Yord? He was one of the Jedi in the council that.
Oh Jesus Christ! Yeah,
he sucked. He was early. He died. Jecki, remember Jecki? That was
Daphne Keene.
Yeah, Daphne Keene. She had a good fight with May and a good fight with the Stranger. She kind of held her own. That was some good.
There are some good fights here.
That's what I'm saying. The fight scenes were good. We got the whip saber
but for like 5 seconds. Like quick. They made a huge deal out of that, and they never showed it. What'd you think of your man Basil?
Oh,
Basil, sniffer guy.
Basil was helpful. A little sniff. He knew that it was May, not Osha. He kind of helped Soul with that.
Yeah, but then he was chasing after her, and then he pulled the plug on the ship.
Yeah, a little prick.
Like, what are you doing?
Little prick guy. What'd you think of the bleeding kyber crystal, the saber changing colors?
I think that's corrupted, but I have a little bit of a problem with it because it's not hers.
Yeah,
it has to be yours in order for it to, as the resident kyber crystal expert, it has to be yours.
It's also kind of, I hear you. No, you're our resident expert. I got on that, no doubt. There's also
anyone else created a lightsaber? Because I have.
No,
not yet.
That is on my to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
Twins can be kind of like lazy writing too. Like, oh, it's twins. Yeah. Like there's that, and then there was also like they basically wipe May's mind. They do like a mind wipe on her at the end.
Like they did like a Men in Black thing.
They Men in Black there. I'm like, all right.
Like,
and then you do get Yoda, and it's like, hey, you guys might not like this, but here's Yoda, and here's Plagueis, and you're like, okay.
Neither one of them are going to talk.
Nope, that's a goddamn thing. What else we got? Osha putting on the helmet at the end. Oh, that was the other thing. Is Osha puts on the helmet at the end of episode 6, and you're like, this is gonna get wild. And then episode 7 was just that like long flashback storytelling. Yeah. We could talk about this forever.
Yeah, I don't want to.
They did mention the Huts. Like the Huts were still that was back in early episodes, and they mentioned like R2 droids. Trade Federation guys. We talked about this in our first episode, but they had those guys that looked a lot like the episode 1 guys. They did not sound like the
It
episode.
did not sound like them.
No.
They're not as racist as those ones.
No, no. Anyway, that'll do it for us. So 2.5 for me, 2 for Davey. The Acolyte, sadly, very disappointing. Liked it at first, promising, good action sequences in there. Just a letdown overall. So that's what we think. Let us know what you think at Dork Podcast, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. If you're watching us live, first of all, thank you. Second of all, we're going to jump over to the other link, and we're going to do The Boys season 4. So it's been a big month in TV, so we will do that coming up next. And for everybody else, we will talk to you soon.